Good afternoon, dear guests. My name is Uliana Chromyak, and I'm the Executive Director of Ukraine House Davos. It is my great pleasure to introduce to you our next panel, the Minister of Strategic Industries, Alexander Kamyshin, who will talk about Ukraine's bold vision of becoming the military arsenal of the free world. Before we start the panel, I would like us to review a short video.
Ukrainian forces forging a fight like never before. There are hundreds of thousands of people still fleeing the violence into neighboring countries.
Fleeing the Russian bombardment of the town of Irpin.
The children drew themselves with unhappy faces.
4 generations, great-grandmother, grandmother, mother, and children had nowhere to go. They wound up in a shelter.
The International Criminal Court has launched an investigation against Russia's actions in Ukraine.
This investigation provides the best hope for those who wish to see Vladimir Putin stand trial in the future.
Russia must be held accountable for these horrific crimes, and Putin must be held accountable.
Ukraine and Russia have carried out their biggest prisoner swap since the war began in February.
The exchange took place tonight. Under the concluded agreements, 215 people were released in total.
The first all-female prisoner exchange.
In a first prisoner swap in the past 5 months, Russia and Ukraine exchanged hundreds of prisoners of war on Wednesday.
Meanwhile, tens of thousands of civilians are thought to have died in the past year.
What allegedly happened here is a picture of brutality.
Weaponization must be restrained. War crimes must be punished. Deported people must come back home. And the occupier must return to their own land. We must be united to make it.
And it is my great pleasure to invite to the stage the moderator of the panel, KURTZ-PHELAN, editor, Foreign Affairs. The floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone at Ukraine House for putting this together and having me back after last year. It's my great pleasure and honor to have the chance to talk with the Minister of Strategic Industries, Alexander Kamyshin. Sorry if I'm butchering that name. That's a job he's had since last spring. And if I have my facts straight, you are the first person to have that job. This job was created last year? No, okay, it existed before. Bad briefing. I'm just saying it's my fault. This is obviously a question that goes to the heart of the kind of big strategic questions today, the question of whether Ukraine can build the kind of defense industry that can continue to supply its forces for the fight that is ongoing, and that could continue for some time. Before he was in this role, he was the CEO of Ukrainian Railways starting in, I believe, August 2021. If I have that fact straight, good. And the efficient operation of the railways has, of course, been a globally recognized story over the last several years. So it's no surprise that you are in a job of such importance at this moment. We're going to talk for a little over half an hour, so I will try to be restrained in my questions, because we could certainly go longer than that. But I was hoping we could start, Mr. Minister, with the railways experience. That has been essential in many ways to Ukraine's ability both to account for both its military success, but also its ability to continue operating, functioning as a society and country. So if you could just look back at that experience before we get to your current job, what was the secret of your success? How did you approach that job? And why do you think that has been, I think, to the surprise of most people observing around the world, such a success story?
Thanks, Daniel. Looking back at my railways experience, I would tell that we started exactly 4 minutes later than we should. And I would be happy if our discussion would be not over 30 minutes, but 40 minutes sharp. So being on time was one of our main passions. And I would tell that, by the way, did anyone in the room use Ukrainian railways during the war? The service was good enough?
Yes. It was more on time than Amtrak in the United States. So.
Actually, when Secretary Blinken came to Ukraine by train first time, I asked him whether the trip was better than with Amtrak. He said, "Are you kidding? Are you really asking that?" Another challenge was to bring in and out President Biden, especially knowing his passion to railways and Amtrak in the US. And that happened successfully. There is a board member, supervisory board member in the room, Sergei Lещенко, and he was overseeing that mission. That mission was another mission to write a separate book about, because again, that was the first time when the president of US came in the war country where they don't control the ground, and he traveled by train, not with his own motorcade. But finally, everything was good, and I was so happy when he disembarked in Poland that was, trust me, the risks were quite reasonable.
So Ukraine had one of the largest defense industries in the world when it was in the Soviet days. That had diminished quite a bit by the time of 2014, and certainly by even in 2022 was not fully restored. Give a sense of the state of the defense industry 2 years ago, when you look before the most recent full-scale invasion.
In my railway position, I was always repeating that we keep running. So in my current position, I started saying that we start running. Because again, we got great industry back in the USSR. Somehow it happened that the industry was neglected for decades. And somehow it happened that what we call the great industry now is actually the memory about what we had before. And many things we've been producing are not relevant now, because we face the new war, and this new war needs new armaments. And I'll explain you why you didn't know about previous ministers in my ministry. Somehow it happened that during the war, the country should have the war production ministry. That's how it was called in the UK. And in the USSR, during the Second World War, there were 4 special ministries. They were formed out of one, the Ministry of Armaments, and there was special ministry for tanks, special ministry for ammunition, special ministry for jets, and special ministry for armaments. So again, during the war, the country should have a special ministry that is dealing with weapon and ammunition. And my ministry was formed several years ago. I've got 2 ministers before me. Somehow it happened that we focused on defense industry when my president sent me to oversee this industry. And it's a strategic industry, and it's becoming more and more crucial. And I'm sure that for decades, Ukraine would be developing its defense industry. And actually, that's something all of the countries around should be paying more attention to. Again, we are back to basics. We have to deal with weapon and ammunition, and we have to be sure that democracies are armed much better than tyrannies.
So let's start with one of the most basic of those weapons that I think everyone observing this war has been, I think, a bit surprised by just how important, basic, old-fashioned kind of artillery shells and things that wouldn't be out of place in wars of the 20th century have been in this war. To what extent are you focused on basic artillery especially, and to what extent is that the priority as you look at the range of needs that your military needs?
Definitely. For sure, we are living through a unique experience of switching from Soviet legacy standards into NATO standards. And we are already on the way. We started producing NATO standard artillery systems. As my president said, in November we produced 6 systems. and we're moving on increasing that production. And speaking about the experience of switching from Soviet standards into NATO standards, that's a unique experience. Many countries in this world will finally need this experience. Speaking about ammunition production, I would say that the whole world still didn't double the production, the whole free world. That's US and European Union. And that's something we should all together pay more attention. Globally, we face the same problem. That's scarce components, that's explosives and propellants. And that's where we all together should be paying more attention to develop that production. We are already working on joint production with European companies and US companies, and I'm sure that joint efforts will bring us the result. Speaking about the experience we have, I'm sure that Global South will need this experience because many countries would be switching from Russian standards into NATO standards.
And when it comes to the mechanics of getting that done, is that a matter of converting old factories? Is it building new ones? What is the actual kind of production mechanism for those?
Actually, the Western world is moving on the way where they extend the capacities of existing factories. We are getting back old factories back to life, building new factories, so we walk all ways we can have to get the result, to get the things done.
Let me move on to another capability that seems especially essential as we get through this winter, which is air defenses. There's been a lot of commentary in the West about the strategic priority of replenishing stocks of air defenses so that as Russia continues to fire missiles and send drones at Ukrainian towns and cities, the air defenses continue to be capable of shooting down most of those. To what extent are those stocks where they need to be, and in what ways have you focused on air defenses as a priority?
First of all, I would never stop being grateful to European, US, and other strategic partners who helped us with air defense, because that's what helps us save lives. And any air defense system, it will take years and years to develop the new system. Everyone understands it. So instead of waiting for years until we develop the new system, we found a way how we can make what we call do-it-yourself air defense. That's where we take old Soviet legacy systems and adopt Western missiles on that systems, or we take Western launchers and missiles and integrate it into old Soviet legacy systems. We got a number of projects like that. The projects we do with the US, we call them Frank and Sam. And yeah, that's how we live on now, and that's how we survive this winter. And I'm happy to announce that one of those systems had the first successful use this night. We put Shahid down at 9 kilometers range from 400 meters height. And that's the first use of this system, this specific system. We got about 5 projects in that portfolio, Frank and Sam portfolio. And I'm happy that we already got these systems in the battlefield, protecting our sky, protecting our people, and grateful to our US partners for making it happen.
Were you confident? Yeah, that deserves applause. Were you confident before last night that it would work?
I'm never confident. I'm always testing and trial. So again, I lived nights and nights in the field tests, and that makes you crazy because you spend the night in the test field, then you back to work, and everyone should be thinking that you've been sleeping, but you haven't. And finally, not all tests are successful. And when I was going for the first field test, my president said, don't be over expecting, like manage your expectations. Not every field test would be successful. And indeed, he was right, but we already got a number of great success in that tests, and happy that this one worked as well. And the more tests you do, the more success you get.
When it comes to this kind of innovation, the do-it-yourself innovation, were there models that you look to, places that had done this before, other industries? How have you come up with these kinds of workarounds given the incredibly difficult circumstances you're working in?
What I've learned from railways is about iron people. That's people who are in the system, who are solid, who are innovative, who are creative, resilient, and who can bring ideas. So that's what we have in defense industry as well. So when engineers work together with military people, with army people, and get some support from the government, miracles happen. And that's what we see now. Like Ukraine is making a miracle in defense tech, and I'm sure that Western countries would be eager to learn that lessons, and our engineers, our people, are the source of that innovation.
Let me get to one more capability before getting to some of the other means of getting all this done, and that's drones, another area in which Ukraine has innovated in ways that much of the world has watched and admired. To what extent are you focused on drones, and what are the tricks, the lessons, innovations there that have been essential?
That's something we grew hundreds times already. And like if you would try to buy something made in Ukraine a year ago, it would be quite complicated. We got few brands, all of them were quite well working, and there were no scale. This year showed, 2023 showed that we grew this industry, and defense tech now is a visible and important part of defense industry. And we got over 200 companies producing something that flies, goes on the ground, goes underwater and underwater. And these things work. And I'm sure that it will be more and more important. And we already showed that our Mosquito fleet made Russian Black Sea fleet out of Crimea. We already see that this systems make Russians suffer from FPV drones, make them suffer from land systems, and land systems is the new story. That's something you will learn more and more this year. So because this story is just uncovering.
Land systems, describe what that means.
Land drones.
And those are robotic dogs. What does that look like?
We already got one story where 40 days. One command center was protected with the land system, the land drone, and Russians didn't understand that they were fighting against the robot.
That's amazing. And when you look at the FPV drones, can you say anything about the cost and the extent to which you've been able to bring costs down as the production has surged? Well,
I remember the point where FPVs were over $1,000. Now it's already going under $500, and I'm sure that the cheapest ones you can get in Ukraine, you can get them for 300 something. But there is a new story reiterating like thermal vision, so it brings the cost back higher again, but then you innovate and it goes down, so it's a long cycle. And what's the point? The point is that innovation cycle in Ukraine, in defense tech, could be as short as a few weeks, from the point where it doesn't work to the point where, great, it works again, -1 Russian, or +1 good Russian, as we call it.
You mentioned tech transfer, which seems like a fascinating topic going both ways, both tech coming from outside partners and supporters to you and to Ukraine, but also tech going the other way. Talk about that process and the extent to which that's been easy to persuade partners to do. Are there areas of technology where you've had to work harder to get what you need? And what are the nascent discussions about sending some of your technological innovations to the US or European partners or others at this point?
At this point, we don't export anything that can make more good Russians. So we have to keep it inland, in country, and we have to keep it working on the battlefield. But at some point where we reach the victory, I'm sure that we would be exporting those things, and I'm sure that those things will help our strategic partners build a stronger force, future force, with the part of that defense tech elements, components. And I'm sure that these lessons learned will help our partners make their armies stronger, more competitive, and finally equip them with cheaper things as well.
And when it comes to technology from outside supporters that you need, are there things that you're still asking for? Has that been a difficult process?
It's it's a long process where you innovate, and definitely there are still things that we are happy to share from our partners, but again, we're already sharing some things back. And speaking about the defense tech, there would be always things that would be shared both ways.
Let's talk about money now, the other critical component of this. What kind of investment has enabled this? How much of it is, what's the public-private model? How much of the investment is coming from the outside? And how much is from Ukraine at this point?
While we still have some complicated systems produced on the state-owned side, I would say that defense tech is mainly private. And out of those 200 companies, 190 are coming from private sector. And that's one of our strong superpowers, I would say. We can deliver, and private sector is quite resilient, and with small investments coming from the contracts, so it's not capex, but it's mainly contracting. Private sector showed that we can produce more and more, and at a competitive price, and I'm sure that the sector will grow times this year comparing to prior year.
And is there money coming from outside supporters, public and private? To what extent is that still something that you're pressing for? I imagine you're at Davos in part to meet with people who are much richer than me, certainly.
We are happy to facilitate the development of the market, and we already got first funds that focus on defense tech on the ground in Ukraine. We got the first supporters from outside who invest or either directly through the fund or directly to the companies, and the first investments are already there. They are about lower dozens of millions of dollars, not hundreds yet, but again, we're just starting.
And is that an easy case when you talk to the kinds of people who are at Davos? Do you have an easy case to make in asking for investment, again, whether that's public or private? Do they understand the model? Is the message kind of getting through in a persuasive way to them?
It's complicated because many investment firms still don't have defense tech, defense industry in their mandate, so they're not allowed to invest in defense industry because of some limitations, legal limitations, but I'm sure that more to come. And again, as the whole free world, we should get back to basics. We should remember about defense industry. And investment companies, as one of the vehicles in this process, should be focusing on defense tech as well.
It's, of course, I think, been a wake-up call. The war in Ukraine has been a wake-up call for the United States, for many European countries, about the state of our own defense industries. And that's true about weapons stocks and production, timelines for production and cost, and lots of other things that have people did not think a lot about for a period of time. When you look beyond the war you're in now and think about the lessons that you would share with counterparts in the United States or in Europe, what are the key lessons about your approach? What, to the extent that you've managed to be successful in building this industry and driving innovation, driving costs down, what are the key principles that you would share with others that might be applicable in other countries?
The main point is that democracy should be armed better than tyrannies. So we always would be happy to live a peaceful life, but we all should be ready for the war. And for that reason, defense industry should be the key strategic industry. And again, it's good for economy because that's one of the most complicated and value-added industries. So finally, it brings the economy back to work. And in Ukraine, for instance, out of 5% GDP growth last year, 1.5% came from defense industry. So we're already a significant contributor into economic recovery. And for us, defense industry would be the locomotive for economic recovery. So finally, the Western world, the free world, as we call it, should be focusing on defense industry. That's important.
And are there lessons from your approach or the things you've tried and failed at that for someone trying this in the US government or European government, you would advise them to copy or learn from?
Definitely, we are open to share experience back, and I'm sure that lessons learned would be important and would be learned.
When you look at the economic role of the defense industry in the short term, but also in the long term, how do you see that fitting into the broader Ukrainian picture when it applies to both kind of industry more broadly, but especially the technology industry? What's the kind of relationship between those?
Again, we always were a peaceful country. We've been building ourselves as the breadbasket for Europe. We've been doing agriculture. In my previous life, I've been doing farming as well. But when they came with the war, we had to refocus. Now we are rebuilding ourselves as the arsenal of the free world. And we are focusing on defense industry. There is a banker in the room who was always focused on farming. Now he's learning how to finance defense industry. And more people find themselves in defense industry. In previous life, I would say that everyone would have a friend in Ukraine who was doing farming. Different types of farming, just farming, animal farming, services to farmers, producing something for farmers and so on. So in the nearest years, every one of you would have a friend in Ukraine who is doing something for defense industry, something that flies, fires, and makes more good Russians.
It's worth reminding people in the US context, so much of the innovation that is now in Silicon Valley started with defense contracts, right? All of that was driven by innovations in the Pentagon or contracts with the Pentagon. So I imagine if we project forward 25 years, there are probably technological innovations we'll all be using in our daily lives that will have started with the work that you and your colleagues are doing now. And I think about the phrase arsenal of democracy, which was, of course, used about the United States, but you can imagine that label shifting over in another direction in the years ahead. Let me ask you one last question, because I did promise you would be off the stage by a few minutes from now at the very latest, and I don't want to get chided for not being on the timetable. There's always this tension in, certainly when it comes to US military planning, how you balance the short term versus the long term. And there are, of course, acute needs at the front every day when you look at your own military, but also a need to continue innovating and building new capabilities. How do you manage that tension? I think that's what a lot of defense policy people in the United States are wrestling with, and you're facing a much sharper and more challenging version of it.
First of all, it's remembering that we're still in the war. It's 693rd day of the Great War. And second point, we learned how we can make long-term projects shorter. Because again, it's not because we are that fast or that efficient. That's because people die on the front line and people die in the cities, and every day costs. And we pay the highest price in this war, lives of our people. So it makes you really faster. It makes you really more efficient. And again, it's a great war. And it's the greatest war of generations. We have to acknowledge that. And we still withstand. I'm grateful to all strategic partners we have, all countries that help us withstand in this war for all over the 693 days.
Mr. Minister, thank you for all you're doing. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think I've left 1 minute for applause, so please everyone thank the Minister. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure having you, the Minister. Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. Stay warm in Davos. Yes, and this is for you, Daniel. Thank you. Thank you for your help. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Dear guests, thank you very much for coming. The next panel will start at 2 o'clock on the frozen assets. Please join us. In the meantime, please go to the networking area for a coffee. Thank you.